Hey guys, welcome to the RG channel. What popped up in the mail today? This is the RG351P and I'm excited to test it out with you guys. What we're going to do today is we're basically going to have an in-depth look at this device and we're going to have an all you need to know type of video. So you guys are free to ask any question you want in the comment section down below, and any interaction with the content creator is very welcome, and I will be excited to help you guys out and see what I can do. Now, what we're also going to do is we're going to compare this device to the predecessor of it, which is the RG350P. It is a complete different device right now because this is the new iteration. It has different specs and different hardware, different operating system. It is completely different, and we're going to see how well it fares up as a new iteration compared to the RG350. Not really a comparison, but more like a look back and to see if this is a worthy upgrade or not. But a device which is the current benchmark for a current handheld of this era is the RGB10. It runs the same operating system and has the same hardware and specs as this device, but it doesn't have the bells and whistles that the RG351 has. So let's see if this device can dethrone the RGB10 or not, because this runs a modified version of EmuELEC, which is the operating system of the RGB10. It runs a modified version of it, and I want to see if it is going to be better or the same as this or not, or even maybe worse, and God forbid, I would say. So let's get into the unboxing and see what we can do from there. So let's unbox the handheld and have our first impression. So there is a paperwork in Japanese about after service card. So that is after service card from Watsco itself. Here we have the handheld covered by a piece of foam. It's kinda slipped to the bottom while shipping, but not a problem really. I don't know where the plastic bag went, but let's just get it out. So this is the handheld. Let's put it to the side and see what else is inside here. We have a USB Type-C charging cable and our usual user manual. It's your average user manual from ANBERNIC, so let's just pass over that one later on. And let's take a look at the handheld itself. So now that we have finished unboxing the device, let's have a little bit of a quality check and test out the buttons and stuff like that, how they feel. Talking about quality checks, the QC sticker was such a pain to get off. Really, I'm going to get some bad, horrible flashbacks from this one. It's such a menace to get off. It keeps sticking to your fingers. It goes into the crevices of the SD cards and just horrible. But let's just get soothed by the RG351P's beauty. The buttons itself feel great. They are exactly the same as the RG350P. If something is already great, why change it? That's right. I like it this way, so just keep it that way. And they did that. They feel the same. They are absolutely great, and there's nothing better than them. When you rattle the device, it doesn't really make any noise, so that's a good thing. That means that it is well seated into the button wells, and there's no complaints about that. The top of the device has the L2 and R2 buttons, and L1 and R1. Now, compared to the RGB10, this one is spaced out of each other, which is good. You cannot mispress them like the RGB10 had, which was a bummer really. This device was great, but it had that issue which really took the blood under my nails, I would say, or that's a Dutch saying actually. So yeah, that makes you kind of infuriated is the point that I wanted to make. And now this one doesn't have that issue, so I'm happy with that. The analog sticks are Nintendo Switch analog sticks. I think they're built a little bit differently, so we don't really need to worry about having analog stick driftings, because the RGB or the RG350P also had differently built analog sticks compared to the Nintendo Switch. So I hope they kept that the same. But until people start complaining about analog drifting, I don't think you need to worry about that, because they're not made by Nintendo. That's a good thing in this case. So to the bottom of the device, what do we have here? We have the reset button, we have the speaker grills. This is a stereo speaker setup, and we have the SD card slot. And to the right side, we have the volume wheel, which is very nice of them to add to this device. I'm very happy with that. To the right side, to the left side, I'm sorry, is the power button. And the power button is recessed a little bit into the body so that you don't mispress it when you rest your hands on it. So that's a good thing and well considered way of building a device. I complained about that with the RG350 metal version, and they changed that, which I'm happy with. And here we have the OTG DC port for the charging. So this is the charging port. We have a headphone jack, 3.5 millimeter, and we have an OTG port over here for USB dongles and stuff like that. We don't have HDMI like we used to have on the RG350P and M. So we had HDMI over here and the other ports were there, but we don't have HDMI on this one. It's probably because of the chipset of this device is not capable of handling HDMI, as we have seen with the ZPG Pro, which failed catastrophically because of that fact that it doesn't have HDMI, even though they boasted that it had the HDMI. That's what I remember. I don't know how it is right now, but that's what I remember last when I checked. And that's it for the sides of the device. To the back, we have anti-slip pads. They're made out of silicone. They actually say that it's 1.3 amperage for the adapter. So don't use fast charging adapters with this one if you don't want to damage your device, or that's what I think is the best to do. Now that's it for the quality check. I think this device is built very well, and even though it's not metal or anything, it is very solid and it has no creaks. Like if you move it like this or bend it a little bit, it just is built like a tank. There's nothing to complain about when it comes to build quality. And in terms of the build quality, this device is still as good as the RG350P. They didn't improve anything, but it is because this one already was standing at the top of build quality when it comes to plastic devices. So they didn't change much when it comes to build quality, and I'm happy with that. That's a good thing. So a big plus when it comes to that. And compared to the RGB10, this has definitely a better build quality. So yeah, sorry RGB10, but this one goes with a point to RG351P. Let's move on to the hardware and specs. In terms of hardware and specs, the RG351P blows its predecessor out of the water, so let's just put Mr. RG350P on the sideline to watch us talk about the hardware and specs. This device has an RK3326 chipset clocked at 1.3 gigahertz, and they boast that it's 1.5 gigahertz, but according to some tests, it is 1.3 gigahertz, similar to the RGB10. And both of them also have 1 GB DDR3 RAM memory, and that's plenty of memory. The device itself comes as well with a 64 GB SD card in my case. You probably also have a 32 GB option over here, but I have the 64 GB option, so that's good. And you can expand it up to 256 GB of SD card memory, if I'm correct. And also we have a actual stereo speaker setup on here, so it sounds very good in terms of sound quality and how loud it can get. It really sounds very good. And the display itself is a 320 by 480 IPS display, 3.5 inches, and the display is laminated, unlike the RGB10, which is a big plus in my opinion. It makes it a lot more crisp and a lot more vibrant in terms of display quality. This device has a 3,500 milliamperes battery life or battery capacity, and it has a battery life of 8 hours, which is more than the RGB10 10. It's very significant, so you have more playtime than the RGB10. In terms of hardware specs, it still, you know, kind of beats the RGB10. So let's just put the RGB10 out here and talk a little bit more about the hardware specs. Now we have the Wi-Fi. It was supposed to be available, but they changed their mind because there was a crackling noise issue. Because of the Wi-Fi being turned on, it starts to distort the audio, and they just took out all the Wi-Fi modules that were inside the units, and they're now empty. They don't have Wi-Fi modules anymore. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a Wi-Fi module of my own later on once it arrives in the mail, and I'm going to make a video on that to see if it works or not. We're going to find out together and see if that works or not, because that would be great if we could add Wi-Fi to it still. Given that it has crackling noises, you can still fix that issue by routing the sound wires of the speakers a little bit differently, and then the problem will be solved. So if you have a older unit of the RG351P, don't worry, you can solve that issue of the crackling noise by rerouting the wires of the speaker without a problem. Now, that's it for the hardware and specs. Let's just talk about the operating system and software a little bit. So let's turn on the device and talk a little bit about the operating system. When you turn it on, it has a faint rumble, and you notice that this device has a rumble feature going on, and the boot screen is nice, and it is by ANBERNIC, not really hard kernel like the other clones, and they are changing their SPI memories very well. And as you can see, it boots up instantaneously, even though I put a lot of ROMs worth of 64 GB on here, completely filled up. And we have all the emulators. What I did is I put my own 64 GB ROM collection on here. And that is because the original ROMs were, firstly, not a lot. And secondly, it was some hacks were enabled, so that's not really much fun. So I didn't want that on my device, so I threw all those ROMs out and put my own ROMs on there. But let's move on to the operating system once again. What I noticed is a faint amount of screen tearing. As you can see, there is some screen tearing going on in EmuAlec only. So it is funny to know that while you game, there is no screen tearing when you run RetroArch, but only in EmuAlec, the main screen, it starts to screen tear, which goes to show that this is a software-related issue, and they can work on it. Probably in the next update, they will probably have it fixed, and I hope that is the case. But it's not really a big deal because it's only in the main screen and Nintendo DS emulation. Generally speaking, Nintendo DS emulation on this device is still lagging behind compared to the other RK3326 chipset devices, because those currently with EmuAlec 3.8 work very flawlessly. And on this one, it still has some lags and frame skipping going on. So that's not that great in terms of Nintendo DS emulation. We're going to show it off and you'll be able to see it for yourself. But Nintendo DS emulation needs some work to be done on it. The other RetroArch emulators are all really great. So a thing you need to do right off the bat is best to do is go to game settings. Enable smooth games to enable an interpolation that will turn the blockiness of the games a little bit down, because there's a limit to how blocky things have to be nice and retro. But if you turn on smooth games, it still looks very legit and nice. So, and then after that, go to Per System Advanced Configuration, go over to PlayStation Portable, and then the emulator that we're going to use is libretro PPSSPP, because this one works better in this version of EmuAlec than the standalone version, even though the standalone version works a lot better in the 3.8 version of EmuAlec. But in this case, we have to turn on libretro for PPSSPP, and of course turn on max performance, that it doesn't save battery life. And that's better for 3D games and stuff like that. You can turn on max performance for Sony PlayStation 1 as well as Dreamcast, and also turned on for Nintendo 64. For Nintendo 64, we'll have to enable libretro movement 64 plus. By default, it is set to parallel N64. Movement 64 plus is a lot better and runs a lot smoother, so just enable that one, and of course enable max performance as well. The aspect ratio of this device, as you can see from the game settings, is 3:2. This is very good for Game Boy Advance emulation, and this is really great for Game Boy Advance emulation. Take my word for it, because the aspect ratio is just perfect for it. It is also good for PSP, so it's kind of in the middle, not 3:4, but also not way too widescreen like 16:9. This is 3:2, so it's good for PSP emulation, not to look way too unnatural, and also for square display consoles, also on this screen setting, it's not that bad. So having that little bit of stretch is not a problem in my opinion. Now that's it for the operating system that I want to talk about. They're going to update the operating system in the future. Of course, the theme really looks great for this, so I copied the theme over to my other devices that run EmuElec, because it's really easy to copy them over. And the theme really looks great, and I'm looking forward to see what other themes they will include in the future with the updates. They should update it very soon because they need to fix the screen tearing issue, and Nintendo DS performance should be a lot better, because with the EmuElec 3.8 it should be a lot better compared to 3.6, which this one is running right now. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that some good news is that we have a standby feature on this handheld, so you can just turn off the display and pause the game at the same time, and then turn it on again to continue your gameplay. And you know, it's very nice to see that it has a standby feature like Android and stuff like that. So it is a 1 point more to get the RG351P, because standby is very important in my opinion for handhelds. So also a thing to emphasize is that other EmuElec operating systems, like the original ones, don't work on this device properly. It will have the rumble feature turned on all the time if you put that in there. Even though it does fix the screen tearing issue, when you do that, the inputs just are all messed up and you cannot configure it properly easily just like that. So we'll have to wait for another release by ANBERNIC, and then just keep our fingers crossed for it to be a lot better than this operating system that they currently are running. It's their first operating system, so it is very normal that it has some bugs and stuff like that. So yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's move on to some gameplay. So this is a Nintendo DS running on the RG351P using the drastic emulator for EmuElec. And it runs alright, but still it can run a lot better if you use the latest EmuElec version, as I've said before already. Let's have a little bit of a gameplay, and then I can show you the original 3.8 EmuElec performance compared to this one a little bit. Because right now it has some frame skips going on, and that is what makes it a little bit choppy. So if we grab the RGB10 over here, you can notice that it's a lot faster. So let's just put it over here. As you can see, the frame skipping makes it look a little bit choppy. You can change frame skipping in the menu, but still it will lag behind the performance that we see on the RGB10 with the newest emulator of Drastic on it. So we can wait for the new update for this device as well, and then probably we'll see some great performance upgrades, and that will be a great thing. So don't think this is the extent of Nintendo DS emulation capabilities on this device, because it can go a lot better, as you can see on the RGB10. So this is PPSSPP RetroArch running on the RG351P. We're running Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, and as you can see, it has like it's from 20 to 30 FPS, and it's not really that stable. It doesn't have frame skipping turned on, so the performance can be a lot better on PSP if you have the latest version of EmuElec with the standalone emulator for it. Because the standalone emulator on EmuElec 3.6, this one is not that great. It has a lot of frame skipping going on and isn't really running too hot, to be honest. So let me show off the RGB10 running the latest operating system that will come out for the RG351P. So here we have, it's a lot smoother. It has some frame skipping sometimes automatically turned on, but it is a lot smoother and more playable than the one on RetroArch. So that is something that I wanted to point out with PPSSPP. Let's move on to the next emulator. So this is the Legends of Zelda Majora's Mask running on Mupen 64 Plus N64 emulator on the RG351P. And it runs quite well, but once you get into the crowded areas like Clocktown, it gets a little bit laggy. Right now it's running at 20 FPS most of the time. But once you get into Clocktown and a little bit more crowded places, it gets a little bit choppy, like here. As you can hear, a little bit of lag, but nothing too bad really. Most of the games run really great and have no problems running on this device. This is just a little bit more of a difficult game to play on these types of devices. So you can as well, with all the emulators, have save states, and you can load save states, of course, like now we loaded a save state. And that's how that works. This is Rayman II, the Great Escape, running on a Flycast for RetroArch, and it's running very well on the RG351P. I'm very happy with that, because I really love this game. For the Dreamcast version, it is of course a lot better, and it running this well is really great. But sometimes the sound gets cut out in this game, but not in other games. But this is the only issue that we have with the Rayman game. If you just restart the game, it will come back again, and it never really had an issue with it cutting again. So it's something that only happens once when you get through this cutscene. As you can see, there is no sound. It's only you and me. So this is PSX rearmed for RetroArch, running on the RG351P, and it runs very good as expected. And there is nothing to complain about. All PS1 games probably will run very well on this handheld because it has more than enough power for that. And there's nothing to complain about when it comes to PS1. So let's move on to the next emulator. So this is CPS3 running on the FBA Neo emulator. It's hard to concentrate on this game and talk at the same time. So let's just, I suck anyway, so whatever. So it runs really well. That's to be expected because it's not really that heavy of an emulator to run on most of the handhelds. I noticed that it lags a little bit on the RetroPocket 2, but here it is butter smooth, so I'm happy with that. Can enjoy some Street Fighter 3 on this. So those were the more power-hungry emulators out there that need more processing power of this device to run good. And let's go over some of the lightweight emulators that run really well on this handheld. So games of these systems will run very well on this handheld. In case you can imagine some of the games that you want to play on this handheld, I'm going over all the emulators available. We have Nintendo DS, we have Arcade Classics, we have Atari 2600, 5200, 7800, Lynx, and WonderSwan Color, Capcom Play System 1, 2, and 3. We have ColecoVision, we have Amiga, we have Intellivision, we have MSX, we have Vectrex, we have PC Engine, Game & Watch, Nintendo Entertainment System, NES, Famicom Disk System, Game Boy, and Super Famicom, as well as Super Nintendo and Virtual Boy, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Pokemon Mini, SG-1000, and Master System, Sega Genesis, Sega Game Gear, Sega Mega Drive, Sega 32X, Sega CD, Dreamcast, Sharp 68000, and Sinclair, NEOGEO, NEOGEOPOCKET, NEOGEO Color, PlayStation, and PSP, and those are all the emulators that this device can run. It can run Sega Saturn as well, but I don't have the emulator on this device. I don't know why. I should put it on there and test it out later on. But that's it for the emulators on this device. So what is my verdict on this device? This handheld is currently my favorite handheld out of all the handhelds that I own. Even the Retroid Pocket 2, I like this device more because it has EmuALEC, and they will upgrade it and update it later on as well, and things will get a lot better in the future, and the future looks bright for this device because a lot of developers are working on this handheld and love this handheld as well. The older iteration of this handheld got a lot of love from the developers, so I hope the same love will come to this handheld, and I'm looking forward to see all kinds of emulators running on this device and running a lot better than it does right now. It already runs all right, but there are some things to be desired, and this device definitely delivers a lot in terms of emulation capacity. Of course, it's not going to run GameCube and stuff like that. That's something futuristic for these type of handheld yet, but this handheld here is quite good, and we'll have to see where this handheld will go in the future. If you want to pick one up, links in the description down below in case you're interested. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.